The Last Great Loot, when the Wild Bunch defied the Gilded Age. The American landscape in the year 1899 was a contradiction. On the East Coast, the towering steel structures of Andrew Carnegie's industry pierced the sky, signaling the rise of the Gilded Age, an era of unimaginable wealth, technology, and order. But 3,000 miles west, on the vast, desolate high plains of Wyoming, the rules of the civilized world melted away. Here, the law was a myth, the distance was God, and the single most powerful artery of wealth and progress was the steel rail of the Union Pacific Railroad. It was this train, thundering across the sagebrush carrying the colossal fortunes of Wall Street and the U.S. government, that became the target of the most brilliant, successful, and elusive criminal syndicate the West had ever known: the Wild Bunch. This is not the Hollywood myth. This is the true story of how Robert Leroy Parker, known as Butch Cassidy, and Harry Alonzo Longabaugh, the Sundance Kid, engineered a string of heists so audacious they didn't just steal money, they stole the nation's confidence, forcing the titans of American industry to unleash the most feared private police force in history, the Pinkerton National Detective Agency. The resulting manhunt would become an epic global pursuit, forever cementing the outlaw's legend as the final, desperate defiance against the crushing weight of the modern world. Book 1: The Architects of Anarchy. Chapter 1: The Hole in the Wall. The Wild Bunch was born not of shared ideology, but of necessity and geography. The nucleus of the gang, Butch Cassidy, the charismatic planner, Elzie Lay, the cool-headed lieutenant, Harvey Kid Curry, the volatile gun, and later the Sundance Kid, the quiet, deadly partner, found refuge in a specific geological anomaly. This sanctuary was called the Hole in the Wall, a remote, nearly impregnable natural fortress nestled in the high, forbidding cliffs of the Bighorn Mountains of Wyoming. It was a 20-mile-long valley accessible only via a single, treacherous trail, easy to defend and impossible to attack by a large posse. The Hole in the Wall served as the central hub for the most effective network of criminals, rustlers, and robbers in the country. This was the outlaw equivalent of a corporate headquarters, complete with supply lines, secure communications, and a fiercely loyal local support system. Butch Cassidy, the leader, was the antithesis of the typical brutish bandit. He was rarely known to kill, possessed a sly wit, and saw the train robbery not as a desperate act, but as a meticulous, high-stakes business venture. His primary rule was simple: no blood if we can help it. This policy, however, would be constantly tested by the psychopathic ruthlessness of his most effective member, Kid Curry. The gang's primary target was the Union Pacific Railroad, UP. Controlled by the notorious robber baron Jay Gould, the UP symbolized the vast, often ill-gotten wealth of the East. By 1890, a single UP train could be carrying more money in its express and postal cars, gold bullion, paper currency, and bank drafts than the annual revenue of an entire western state. Robbing the train was seen by many desperate ranchers and miners as not merely a crime, but a form of frontier wealth redistribution. Chapter 2: The Carbon Catastrophe. The gang's strategy was perfected through a series of increasingly bold and catastrophic events. Before Butch Cassidy's leadership stabilized the operation, train robberies were often clumsy, resulting in low hauls and high body counts. Cassidy changed this. He believed in three principles: intelligence, explosives, and escape routes. The gang utilized a network of former railroad employees, telegraph operators, and saloon keepers for intelligence. They knew the train schedules, the cargo manifest, particularly where the Wells Fargo or American Express cars stored the high-value safes, and the location of the nearest telegraph station to cut the wires. Their first major success, which cemented their reputation, was the 1896 holdup of the Union Pacific near Tipton, Wyoming. The haul was respectable, but the operation was messy. It was the near disaster that followed that forced Cassidy to recruit his key. Chapter 5. The photo that sealed their fate. In late 1900, believing they had successfully evaded the initial dragnet, Butch, Sundance, Kid Curry, and two other gang members, Ben Kilpatrick, the tall Texan, and Harvey Logan, made a fatal mistake. They journeyed to Fort Worth, Texas, a city where they believed they were anonymous, for a period of relaxation and spending. It was here they decided, in a moment of hubris, to commemorate their success. They commissioned a portrait at the Swartz Gallery. The now famous photograph shows the five men, impeccably dressed in the latest Eastern suits and bowler hats, looking more like Wall Street brokers than outlaws. The photo was a perfect snapshot of their transition. They had shed the dusty rags of the outlaw and adopted the uniform of the Gilded Age financier. A copy of the photo was sent to a local saloon keeper, who, seeing the astonishing reward offered by the Pinkertons, immediately recognized the men and tipped off the authorities. The Pinkertons were ecstatic. They now possessed a clear, high-quality, professional photograph of the gang's leadership, taken in a respectable city. A stunning piece of intelligence that contradicted every grainy, crude wanted poster previously circulated. The image was immediately mass-produced and distributed worldwide. It became the single most effective tool in the manhunt, a constant visual reminder of the rewards awaiting anyone who betrayed the gang. This photo was the death warrant for the Wild Bunch. Chapter 6. The Last Train, Great Northern, and the Great Divide. Under intense pressure, the gang fragmented. Kid Curry, the most violent, separated and was hunted relentlessly, eventually captured and briefly escaping before meeting his violent end. Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, however, had a final, monumental plan. They would pull off one last glorious score before leaving the United States entirely. The target was the Great Northern Railway near Wagner, Montana, on July 3, 1901. This robbery was textbook Cassidy proficiency. The trap. They boarded the train after it had stopped for a watering stop. The express car. They isolated the express car, which was carrying the immense payroll of the Anaconda Copper Mining Company. The final explosion. Using a large charge, they blew the safe. The resulting haul was confirmed to be over $65,000, one of the largest single train robbery hauls in American history. This was their final, magnificent gesture of defiance as the Pinkertons closed in from every direction, and their faces broadcast worldwide. Butch and Sundance knew the game was over in the United States. They had enough cash to vanish. Chapter 7. The Journey to Oblivion. Using their clean money, Cassidy and Sundance, now traveling with Sundance's loyal lover, Etta Place, made their final, stunning move. They moved their entire operation to South America. In February 1901, they boarded the steamer Soldier Prince in New York City, bound for Buenos Aires, Argentina. This was an astonishing decision, a logistical nightmare for outlaws, requiring forged identities, expensive tickets, and the audacious belief that the American law could not cross the ocean. Butch Cassidy transformed again. He was no longer Robert Parker, the cowboy. He was James Santiago Ryan, a reputable American rancher looking to invest in South American land. Sundance became Harry Enrique Place, James's brother. They bought a large, beautiful ranch near Cholula, Argentina,
and for nearly 5 years they lived a quiet respectability, farming cattle and trying to live out the simple life they
Expanding Butch Cassidy's philosophy and leadership. Butch Cassidy's genius lay in his ability to maintain a criminal organization through charm and logistics, not just violence. His reluctance to kill was central to his identity and his eventual downfall. The Robin Hood of the West. The narrative must firmly establish Robert Leroy Parker, Butch Cassidy's carefully cultivated persona. He was often viewed as a romantic figure by the small ranchers and settlers, because his targets were the colossal corporations that often squeezed them out of existence, the railroads, the large cattle barons, and the banks. The amnesty attempts. We must detail the astonishing, factual attempts Butch made to go straight. Beginning around 1895, and most seriously after the Wilcox robbery, Cassidy repeatedly used intermediaries, often prominent Utah politicians or friends of the governor, to negotiate a full pardon in exchange for a promise to never commit a crime again. This was a sincere pursuit. He wanted to retire with his accumulated wealth, a testament to his intelligence and desire for legitimacy. The consistent refusal by the railroad barons and the Pinkertons, who demanded his imprisonment or death, underscores the Gilded Age's unforgiving nature and forces him back into the life of crime. The Wild Bunch rules. Cassidy ran the gang like a business, with clear rules, which were often documented in Pinkerton reports. Rule number 1, minimize harm. Passengers were never to be robbed unless they specifically tried to interfere. Train crew were often treated courteously and given back money if it was personal. This kept the local populace less inclined to join posses. Logistics is destiny. The primary focus was always the escape route. Every hideout, every relay of horses, and every communication point had to be planned days in advance. No spree robbing. Heists were scheduled and spaced out to avoid flooding the market with too much hot money and to allow the Pinkerton pursuit to cool down. The conflict with Kid Curry. Harvey, Kid Curry Logan, was Cassidy's greatest asset and his biggest liability. He was the volatile, cold-blooded killer who enforced the gang's operations but undermined Cassidy's nonviolent philosophy. A trail of blood. Detail a specific, ruthless act committed by Curry that highlights the tension. For instance, the killing of Sheriff William Dean and Deputy Sheriff Robert Hazen in June 1903, while Curry was in the East. This was a shocking and unnecessary display of violence that instantly increased the Pinkerton bounty and focused the national press on the murderous nature of the gang, completely erasing Cassidy's gentleman bandit image. The strategic rift. This difference in philosophy was not just moral.